All right, welcome. Today, we are putting one of the most common foods on the planet on trial, and that food is the tomato. For literally centuries, this thing has been at the center of a huge identity crisis, a debate that, believe it or not, went all the way to the Supreme Court. So let's peel back the layers on this one. And here it is, the question you've probably asked yourself a dozen times. When you're slicing up a tomato for a sandwich or throwing it into a sauce, what is it, really? A fruit? A vegetable? Well, the answer is way more complicated and honestly, way more interesting than you'd probably guess. You know, there's this brilliant quote that just perfectly sums up the whole problem. Knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad. It nails the core conflict, doesn't it? There's what we know is technically true, and then there's how we actually live and, how we make our salads. This is the exact tension we're going to unravel today. Okay, so to start our investigation, we've got to go right to the source, the science. Let's hear what the botanists have to say. These are the people who classify plants for a living. And for them, the answer seems pretty cut and dried. So the botanical definition is super precise. It's all about the plant's anatomy, right? A fruit is what grows from the flower of a plant, and it has the seeds inside. Simple. So by this standard, a tomato is, without a doubt, a fruit. Case closed, right? Well, not so fast. This is where a simple scientific fact starts to get a little complicated. And this is where that scientific definition can really start to mess with your head. Just get a load of this list. Avocados, olives, cucumbers, pumpkins, and even green peas. Botanically speaking, every single one of these is a fruit. They all come from a flower, and they all have seeds. It kind of blows up our whole idea of what a fruit is supposed to be, doesn't it? Okay, so if the science is so clear, why are we even having this debate in the first place? Well, to figure that out, we have to jump back in time, because the tomato had a really, really rough start in Europe, and its reputation was, to put it mildly, absolutely terrible. So after it was brought over from the Americas in the 1500s, Europeans were just deeply suspicious of it. I mean, it's part of the nightshade family, which has some genuinely deadly plants in it. One really influential herbalist in 1597 said it was stinking and gross. By the 1700s, people were calling it the poison apple. Now, one theory is that rich people were getting sick because the tomato's acid was leaching lead out of their fancy pewter plates, giving them lead poisoning. It actually took the invention of pizza way later, around 1880, for the tomato to finally shake off that bad reputation. But the drama does not end there. Oh no. Now, let's fast forward to the United States in the late 1800s. This is where this whole botanical question turned into a full-on legal brawl that went all the way to the highest court in the nation. The case was Nix versus Hedden back in 1893. So at the time, there was a tariff act that put a tax on imported vegetables, but not on fruits. So a tomato importer, arguing, hey, tomatoes are fruits, sued to get his tax money back. And just like that, the identity of the tomato had some serious cash riding on it. So what you have is this amazing showdown between two completely different ways of defining something. On one side, you've got the pure botanical truth. A tomato has seeds, it comes from a flower, it's a fruit. But on the other side, the Supreme Court basically said, hold on a second. They ruled that in the common language of the people, everyone, and they meant everyone, treats tomatoes like vegetables. You eat them with dinner, not for dessert, and for the purpose of laws and taxes, how we actually use it mattered more than the science. And that Supreme Court ruling leads us perfectly into our third and final perspective, the culinary world. How do the people who actually cook with tomatoes, chefs, home cooks, all of us, how do we classify them? You see, in the kitchen, nobody is talking about seeds and ovaries. It all comes down to taste and what you do with it. We think of vegetables as savory, maybe a bit tougher, something you use in a main course. And fruits, they're usually sweet or tart, and we eat them for dessert or as a snack. So by that logic, the tomato, with that rich, savory umami flavor, is a classic vegetable. Okay, so we've looked at the science, we've looked at the law, and we've looked at the kitchen. We have 3 different arguments, and they all point in different directions. So what's the final verdict in the great tomato trial?
Well, the verdict is, it's complicated. The tomato isn't just one thing. It's got 3 different identities. Botanically, it's a fruit, no question. Legally, at least in the US, it's a vegetable. And in the kitchen, when we're cooking, it's a vegetable. The right answer really just depends on what lens you're looking through. It's all about context.
But here's the thing, no matter what you call it, you just can't deny how important it is. After surviving being called poison and getting dragged through the Supreme Court, the tomato is now one of the most popular foods in the entire world. We're talking about 180 million tons grown every single year. That's just staggering.
So at the end of the day, the story of the tomato teaches us that these categories we use aren't always so black and white. It shows us that things like language, culture, and context can be just as powerful as pure science in shaping our reality. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What else in our lives is defined not by what it is, but just by how we've decided to look at it?